Playoff teams have been selected and the transfer portal is heating up. Grab a drink and join us on this week's Tailgate. Hey, what's up, everybody? I am Luke, and I am joined here, as always, by Michael.
Yep, I'm here. That's me, Michael.
And Dennis is not here.
Oh.
He is,
Did he send you a text as to why he's not going to be here?
I think that it has something to do with his dark horse, Louisville.
Yeah. He had to go out back and put his dark horse.
Had to put it down.
Yeah,
Yep.
he had to go put it down. Gotcha.
Plus side, we'll have more glue next week.
And some Jello.
And a little bit of jello. Yep.
Yeah,
So
we'll have some
we're all
Jell-O.
good. But yeah, we are not going to have Dennis with us tonight,
Unfortunately.
We are sad about it. We know you are. But let's hear from our sponsor.
Yep, our sponsor tonight is, unlike always, is actually a new sponsor, but also kind of connected, is Explore Nash. If you are interested in learning about Middle Tennessee and wanting to know cool places to go and cool places to visit, or just you're wanting to get up to date on any of the new happenings that are going on in Nashville or Middle Tennessee, check them out at Explore Nash on YouTube and or Instagram. So we finished out the conference championships this weekend.
We did.
Yeah, and it was pretty awesome.
It was an up and down journey.
It was an up and down journey for sure.
There were some good. I mean, we'll start off. Let's talk about Friday night's game.
Yeah.
So Oregon-Washington.
A good game.
Great game.
Yeah.
So obviously this was a rematch from earlier on where Washington took it, and Washington took it again.
Yeah, we were all wrong.
We were. We were. I
Like,
forgot about that. Yes, we were all wrong.
you know what? Maybe that's why Dennis isn't here, is he just didn't want to eat any humble pie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably what it was.
Michael does it all year long, and Dennis can't do it once.
Well, he is diabetic, so.
That's true.
Yeah,
it was an interesting game. I mean, Washington, it was kind of that back and forth. You see Washington go 10-0 in the first.
Mm-hmm.
The second is dead even, 10-10.
Yep.
And then after halftime, Oregon comes
Surging
rushing back.
Yep.
They outscore 14-0, 2 touchdowns to none in that third, and all of a sudden we've got this 24-20 game.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fourth quarter happens, and Washington it was a roller coaster. Washington comes back in the fourth, gets 2 touchdowns to Oregon's 1, and that's all she wrote.
Yep. Well, and I mean, like, again, I hand it to Washington. They put more gas in the tank. They clearly found a way to stop off at a petroleum station,
Right.
if they call it a petrol station.
Petrol.
And they filled their tank back up. They seemed like they actually wanted to play. Which was impressive, and
it seemed a lot different than how they had been
the past few weeks. Yeah,
I mean, I think I still stand by what we talked about last week when we said that Oregon looked to be the team that was dead set on rectifying, the loss, whereas Washington just looks like they were emotionally dead.
Yeah,
but this game they were not. This game they came out. Penix looked like the guy he had looked like the first half of the season, just throwing the ball, running, doing what he needed to do to win. Bo Nix looked like he does every week. I mean, he's a consistent guy.
That's the thing is, like, Oregon didn't look bad.
No,
they looked just as consistent as they had. It's just Washington showed up in a way I think Oregon wasn't expecting them to.
Yeah, nobody was.
Yeah, I mean,
Nobody
clearly
here.
nobody here, none of the analysts here were expecting that to happen.
But it was a great game. It was a great way to start off.
Yeah,
like kind of that championship weekend.
Yeah, it felt like a championship week. And
even though I think New Mexico State Liberty actually kicked it off, if I remember correctly. But
yeah, well, we're not talking about.
We're not going to talk about them.
Yeah.
Even though Liberty won 49-35.
Woo. Did they really win? Because we'll talk about their bowl in a second. But then we go into the next day, and you have the first onslaught of games where, if you're an SEC fan, especially if you're a Bama fan, you don't want to see Texas win.
Not at all.
Because if Texas wins, it makes it a whole lot harder for you to get into the playoffs. That's a lot
more dominoes have to fall if Texas wins.
Yeah, exactly. And so, Texas goes in, and honestly, a lot of people assumed that this was going to be a pretty boring game, but potentially close or whatnot to some degree.
Right.
And Texas made sure it was not. Nowhere close. They just completely dominated Oklahoma State.
Yeah, it was. I mean, from the get-go, they just kind of came out, and that first quarter, they just, it was almost like foot to the throat type thing. It was 21-7 after the first quarter, and then after the second, they didn't let up. They had 2 touchdowns. It's 35-14 at that point. And then from there, it was just coasting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they really took the wind out of Oklahoma State's sail early on, and then just kind of sat back and rode it out.
Well, and you can tell like a team's having fun when they're doing a razzle-dazzle and all that.
Right.
Like you don't usually see that in a championship game because you usually see a team that respects their opponent. Right. And Texas didn't feel like they had to respect Oklahoma State, and they clearly didn't.
They clearly didn't. They didn't need to. I mean, Oklahoma State, for all the good things they've done this year, they didn't really show up in this game.
No, they didn't. And the thing is, though, Texas did exactly what they needed to do to show the playoff committee that they deserve to be in the playoffs. They showed another dominant performance, which is something that they've kind of been doing a lot for the past couple of weeks, especially with Ewers coming back. And so it's just, it really doesn't, like, it going into this next game, it really looked bad. A bad outlook for the SEC or Bama. I really should say Bama, because at that point, the only SEC team that could really make it in at that point would be Georgia.
Yep.
That's what made logical sense to even SEC fans.
Anybody who's thinking of that as just a not necessarily even like a fan, but just like kind of the analytics.
Yeah.
You go, okay, if Michigan win, if Georgia wins, Michigan wins. Here's how this falls.
Exactly.
Texas winning is just kind of like, okay, Georgia is the team to get in from the SEC.
Yeah, and so like you got Washington in. They're clearly a shoe in. Now Texas has made a very good case for why they should be in. Then we get into Bama versus Georgia, and this was another Oregon versus Washington. Like if it like two teams that were very much like they're clearly surprisingly the same caliber. Even though if you ask people at the beginning of this season if that was the case, they would say Georgia was significantly more dominant than Alabama.
And I think even I was talking about, like, hey, Saban's going to retire at the end of this year. They're not looking like the Bama of old.
No, I said that too.
And about halfway through the season, they just kind of turned it on.
Turned it on.
And really after that Texas loss.
Yeah.
You saw that loss?
Yeah. It was really at USF, where they really okay, we've got to do something.
Let's step it up.
Yep.
But yeah, this one was, Alabama took early control, after the first, Georgia took control 7-3 in the first, but then didn't score in the second, and Bama had the 14 unanswered there. So you go in 17-7 at halftime, you're feeling good. Third quarter comes out, you're still feeling good because they each get a field goal. And then the fourth quarter comes, and UGA really kind of puts the pressure on.
Yep.
They scored 2 touchdowns. Now, granted, one was with about 3 minutes to go, I believe. But Bama looked good.
Yep.
Georgia didn't look bad, but Bama did look good.
Yeah. Bama looked a lot more composed. They looked actually very disciplined in comparison to what they looked like earlier this year. They showed that they had drastically improved. And they both put on great performances as to why they deserve to be in the playoffs.
Right.
I, as an SEC fan, I left that game going, they'll be lucky if either one of them get in.
Right.
I personally, especially a Tennessee fan, I'm like, I don't really care for either one of them to get in, so I don't really care either way. And but I was like, there's one other game later today that's really, I think, going to determine this. But before that game, before we started, kind of saw what happened in that game. Another game was going on, which was just kind of a legitimate blowout and boring as all get out, as we all see.
Just like any Big Ten game, you know, Michigan, Iowa was what we all thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I was wrong. Iowa didn't score.
Yeah.
So for anybody who thought they were going to put on a little bit of offense, they didn't. Honestly, and this, I think that I don't think Michigan played hard.
Well, clearly they didn't.
I don't think that they really. I think they went into this game knowing we have to do just enough. Probably a smart move going, we're not going to get guys hurt. Now, they played hard. Don't get me wrong. Their guys played hard. They did what they needed to do, but they didn't look like they were pulling all the stops out. They didn't look like they, respected Iowa enough, which I don't think they should, but they didn't respect them all that much in this game because they just kind of came out and did what they needed to do.
Well, yeah. I mean, they only scored half as many points as Penn State did against Iowa.
Right.
And Penn State also shut out Iowa. So, and Penn State, we all know, has like the best offense in all of the Big Ten. So
very high up there.
Yeah, it's way up there.
So
yeah.
I mean, what do you say? It was, there was some controversy in there with some, some fumbles by Iowa that may or may not have been forward passes, and some, Michigan should have been turnovers that weren't. Nothing that was going to ever change the game. Nothing that was going to alter any outcomes. But it was exactly what we thought it was. Michigan came out and dominated their Big Ten opponent like they have done so frequently this year.
Oh yeah, and for the past couple of years. I mean, it's curious, but anyways, we'll continue to move on, and then we get to the last conference championship where, we had the dark horse, Dennis's dark horse, who he's currently deling with right now.
Right. Lots of tears being shed right now.
Clearly, and other things being shed too. Versus Florida State, who we had kind of at the beginning of the year we're pretty high on Florida State, expecting them to get to the conference championship, which is exactly what they did. It was an incredibly boring game.
Yeah,
like it was a weird game of two different defenses. It honestly was kind of like a Big Ten game. But
worse.
But worse because the defenses don't play as good as the Big Ten defenses.
Now, Florida State's defense,
it's true.
Since he's gotten hurt, since their quarterback's gotten hurt, the defense has really
they've stepped up. I agree with that. Yes, they've definitely stepped up. But essentially, neither one of them, like Louisville looked like they had just been skull drugged by Kentucky, so they just looked tired. FSU just looked like they couldn't even keep up with a tired Louisville, which that did not instill confidence in a playoff committee or even in college football fans that they were going to be a team that was really going to bring a level of entertainment or competition to the playoffs.
Well, they set a record on this game, and I think it was for the fewest amount of points scored in an ACC championship in the first half.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was, you literally went into halftime 3-0, and just kind of like, what are we watching?
Yep. Whereas you had like Texas just a few hours earlier putting up the most points ever in a Big 12, and so it's just like even the commentators were going, listen, we get it. Like, this is basically going to be a 13-0 conference championship FSU. They do not look like a championship caliber team right now. They just don't. And so that leads us into like what ended up happening the next day, where we looked at the playoff committee finally came out with their rankings, and to a lot of people's surprise. I mean, I personally was still surprised by this because I still figured that being a Power 5 championship or champion of your conference, everything like that, being undefeated should have at least waited, kicked
should have
out.
had some weight.
Should have had some weight.
Yep.
I wholeheartedly expected Texas to be in. I personally did not expect any SEC teams to be in. And no, Texas doesn't count because that's next year. All these SEC fans. There's two SEC teams. No, there's not.
Not yet.
And I honestly did believe that FSU was going to still be in.
I thought so too. And I mean, when you look at it, some of the arguments that I'm hearing, and I totally get it, right?
Yeah.
Is Florida State was playing with their third string quarterback in this ACC. Now, there's not a lot, you look back at Ohio State back in 2014 when they played with their third string quarterback. Big difference there was that he won the championship, the conference championship 59-0 versus and looked like a star versus what this third string quarterback did. but their second string quarterback is in concussion protocol. He's going to be back for the bowl game. So
ideally,
yes. So the second string quarterback arguably would have been playing in the bowl. So like you kind of have to keep that in your back of your mind.
True.
However, and we talked about this, I think FSU 100% deserves to be there with the way they play, the way they fought, the way that their team has come together and won. But as a college football playoff, let's think back to last year when you had TCU, who, while they did beat Michigan, they then went and had probably one of the most boring national championships in a long time. And as a college football playoff committee, you have to look at that and go, does this Florida State team, even with the second string quarterback, have a chance against any of these teams?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
I mean, I realistically think the answer is no. So, like, I can understand Florida State's anger, their emotions about this. 100% get it. And I think that they have every right to feel that way.
Yeah.
And I feel like the college football playoff, in order to have good games, made the right decision.
Yeah.
By putting teams in there that I think are going to be a lot more evenly
more competitive.
matched, more competitive. We're going to have better games. And I think that's the hard part about what they do, is that they have to make these decisions and go, you're a 13-0 conference champion. However, there are extenuating circumstances that make you not one of the top four.
Well, yeah, and the thing is too, like the other big thing is like right before we get into even the conference championship weekend, you have the committee chair of the college football playoff basically saying, "Hey, it's about the best team. It's the best teams. It's not about the most deserving." And I agree with Josh Pate. Like kind of has to be both. Like you can't. Yeah, that's a silly thing to say.
The best team is actually James Madison, so we're going to bring him in.
Yeah, exactly. It's like who's like, if the best team is actually a 2-loss team, well then you should be playing them. Like that was Nick Saban's entire argument last year.
Right.
And it just wasn't true. It was the most deserving teams that deserve to be there. And so you have to have both, but it was just one of the things that I was listening to earlier today. I was listening to a report from people that were inside the room where the selection was being made on Sunday, and they were basically all like, it was almost unanimous from what it sounded like in the room that FSU was number 5.
Wow.
It wasn't like even they were like, and they weren't pitting them against Alabama or anything.
Right.
Like they were like, no, they're just not strong enough. They're just not good enough. And that and again, it really does show the value of a player. Like, and they, people want to talk about Ohio State from 2014.
2014.
And like how they came in and they did such a great job. But as you were pointing out, in the Big Ten championship, he just annihilated Wisconsin.
He balled out, yeah.
And so it's like that just didn't happen. If you see them annihilate Florida, you see them annihilate Louisville, that's a very different conversation.
100%.
Very different conversation. But they, and FSU fans that are just like, well, we went 2-0 against the SEC. Like we beat up on the SEC. I get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. I get that you beat up on a team that was bottom tier of the SEC East and that was middle of the pack for the SEC West. And again, I get that LSU has the best quarterback in the country per the current Heisman picks that are going on, but it doesn't change the fact that LSU also has no defense, and we've seen that all year. So they can make your offense look really good. Florida has been relatively mediocre, if not terrible, all year. So you cannot sit there like that. That's like Tennessee bragging about beating up on Vanderbilt.
Right.
Like your strength of schedule was lacking. So
and not to mention, like, you did that with a quarterback whose leg is broken. Unfortunately, and he's not available. Like, you can't. He's such a great player, and yes, I know it's a team game, and but you see the drop off from a first string quarterback at FSU to a third string.
Yeah,
because things being different, and they're playing with their full team. I think Florida State in that Louisville game in the ACC championship is winning that thing 59-14.
Easy.
Is dominating. So you see where that drop off is, and unfortunately, where again, did Florida State earn it? Did they deserve it? Did they do everything this year to win? And it's a team game. 100%. Should they be there? No.
Yeah. They unfortunately shouldn't. And again, it goes back to the value of that one particular player. And it's just,
it's unfortunate. That's the perfect word.
And here's what I'll say is that FSU, if you want to prove to the rest of, you want to prove to us, you want to prove to the College Football Playoff Committee, you want to prove to all the commentators that say that you shouldn't actually be there, that you were not good enough to be there, you're going to get a chance to show that you did deserve to be there, not just deserve to be there, but you were one of the most powerful teams in the country. Go and beat up on Georgia. If you can do that
with a second string quarterback,
with a second string quarterback, you 100% would have. I would be glad to declare you as the national champions because that's not an easy feat. Even Alabama couldn't beat up on Georgia.
Right.
They still were able to best Georgia, but they weren't able to beat up on Georgia. So that means that you should try to beat them by more than 3 points. Now, if Georgia goes in there and blows you guys out, as I personally suspect to happen,
unfortunately,
that's what I think is going to happen. If because Georgia's is going to be mad too because they feel like they were shafted a chance to be able to go for a three-peat. And I think if that's the case, then FSU is not going to have a leg to stand on.
No.
Now, again, it still doesn't change the fact that I 100% stand with all the people that are just like, oh well, there's this they need to get rid of this SEC bias and stuff like that. I agree. I feel like there was some SEC bias that played into this selection. The committee claims that didn't happen. I don't know their hearts or their minds.
Well, but here's the way you get rid of SEC bias is you go in and you beat the SEC consistently.
Yeah.
This is the whole thing. As a fan of a team that plays in the Big Ten, I 100% agree that the Big Ten is not as strong as the SEC. Now next year we start getting some different teams in. We start,
True.
Even the coach at Northwestern, one of our weakest schools, that coach, they named him the new head coach, and he's getting those guys going. So let's look at, if we want to get rid of SEC bias, beat the SEC. When you have the chance to do it, beat the SEC. That's how you get rid of it.
Yeah.
Until then, I see no ill will going, well, we want an SEC team in there because SEC always puts on a good show. SEC always comes to play. So if you want to get rid of it, again, Florida State, if you want to get rid of it, go pound up on Georgia.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is too, guys, next year we're heading into a 12-team playoff. I hate to break it to you, but that probably means there's going to be probably 4 SEC teams at minimum in there.
And think about this. This is what's always been funny. We had the national championship that was the BCS national championship when they
back
chose
in the day.
two teams.
Yep.
And they said, hey, these are the
1
two
and
teams
2.
that we chose. And everybody, there was always 5 teams that were but we did this and we did that. They went, fine, we'll go to 4.
Yeah.
And now there's 4 more teams or 5 more teams. They're but we should have done this and we did this. The same thing's going to happen when you go to 12.
Yeah.
It's just there's going to be another 6 or 7, 13 through 20 you're going to be, crying, for lack of a better word, about why they should be there.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be teams that are going to be upset about this.
Well, yeah.
However, 12 teams is going to be so much fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And
fun.
The other thing is and this is just my last point with FSU, I was don't forget that FSU back in the early 90s chose to go into the ACC because they were offered a chance to go into the SEC, but they chose to go into the ACC because they knew it was going to be, they said it was going to be an easier path to getting to the national championship, and the SEC just beats up on each other all the time.
Yep.
It's
which is true.
But what you just admitted to the fact is we don't want to play in a tougher league. And so and has the ACC and the SEC changed since the early 90s? Sure, of course. But it hasn't changed, I don't think, that much. It's changed
not changed
enough.
that much. College football has changed.
It has,
things, being able to play in a weaker conference and still get that opportunity
Exactly.
has changed.
And that's why I'm excited about the 12-team playoff, because it gives all of those teams, it gives the FSU, it even gives a potential for a Louisville or something like that, the chance to have a do-over.
Yep.
And so
let's think this is the perfect example for like Oregon.
Yeah.
Oregon would be in the 12-team playoff this year, and it's the perfect chance to them go, yeah, Washington had our number 2 times this year, but we're going to come in and we're going to blow the hinges off this thing, and we're going to take it to, we're going to be the champions.
Yep.
So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm so excited about next year.
Oh, yeah. No, next year is going to be a ton of fun. But before we get to next year, we've got some fun bowl games to look at. So what would you say, Luke? Actually, you know what? We haven't heard from him much tonight. What would you say, Dennis, is going to be your favorite bowl game?
Who's Louisville playing?
Oh, that's a good point.
Louisville's playing USC.
Oh, there you go. Well,
without Caleb Williams.
Yeah, so that actually will be a terrible game.
Yeah.
Louisville will probably run away with that one. Depends.
Since there's no quarterback to throw.
Yeah, they're not going to be anybody back there. They're going to hike the ball at just nothing. It's just going to be
It's just going to go behind him, which happened a few times with Caleb Williams
there
anyway.
Anywho, so I think what would you say, Luke, is going to be your top bowl games for this upcoming season?
Ooh, it's fun. It's hard to choose. Some of the ones that I'm most excited about, I think Arizona versus Oklahoma and the Valero Alamo Bowl is going to be fun. I think those are Arizona kind of towards the end of the year was kind of one of my favorite teams to watch.
Yeah, they felt like a complete team.
It felt like a complete team. They turned it on at the right time. They were really playing well. And then Oklahoma is just Oklahoma. Now, I doubt that they're going to be playing with their quarterback, as we'll get into here in a little bit. So I think that one will be fun. I think one of the interesting ones to watch will be the Fiesta Bowl, which will have Liberty and Oregon.
Yeah, that one's going to be interesting.
Liberty, you got your wish.
You did.
You wanted to play with the big dogs.
And you get to play with one of them.
You're going to play with the big dogs. You're going to play against an Oregon team who is going to be upset. They have lost to Washington twice. They did not win the Pac-12. They're going to be mad.
And Bo Nix said he's going to be back.
And Bo Nix said he's going to come play the bowl game. So, Liberty, good luck, and I wish you all the best. I don't think much is going to happen. But then I think one of the third one that I'll say, not even going to talk about the Ohio State-Missouri game just because that's a homer pick. That's going to be a fun game, though, even though Ohio State will be without lots of guys.
That's one of mine, so I'll put that one in mine. Yeah.
But the Wisconsin LSU and the ReliaQuest Bowl.
That could be pretty good.
I think that'll be an interesting one. Wisconsin's one of the Big Ten teams whose defense has played okay. Their offense is kind of they are moving to more of a pass-heavy offense while still trying to rely on their run game, and they started to kind of incorporate that a little bit better towards the end of the year. And then LSU, I'm just excited to see Jaden Daniels if he does end up playing. I hope he does. I
mean, if he doesn't, then they're going to lose.
If he doesn't play, then LSU will lose. But
more than likely,
I think that will be a fun game. And then just kind of that weird person to me. The colors are fun. The red versus the purple. I just think it's a fun.
That's fair.
So that's kind of the weird thing for me. But those are the three that I'm really interested to see.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, one of the ones I mentioned to you beforehand. I do have Ohio State versus Missouri. I think that's going to be an excellent game. And now I think that one could really swing in Missouri's favor, depending on what ends up happening with Ohio State's quarterback situation.
Yep.
Because the rest of the talent in the offense is not the issue. It's just it's what's going to happen in the quarterback room with McCord going into the transfer portal. But especially if Missouri has basically 100% of their roster playing, that could be a really dangerous game.
If Missouri has their roster, and Ohio State is down the quarterback. I mean, granted, going into the season, McCord and Brown were kind of neck and neck, and that's at least what the coaches said. So you're getting pretty equal quarterback play there, but he's not played all year. So if Missouri has their full roster and Ohio State is down, not just their quarterback, but all of the guys going into the draft potentially, it'll be a very interesting game. It'll be one of those let's just see how our young guys are looking.
Yeah.
Win, lose, I was going to say win, lose, or draw, but we don't really draw. Win or lose, like seeing how the young guys play, it'll be interesting. But yeah, I don't have high hopes for Ohio State in that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I don't have high hopes, but I think it'll be a good game regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think Missouri might have the edge depending on what's going on in the quarterback room there.
For sure.
Another one that I've got would be definitely the Penn State versus Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Peach Bowl. Like that, I feel like it's going to be a lot of fun. You're talking two teams that are kind of similar to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is that you got one team that's more of the defensive powerhouse, and then another team that's more of an offensive powerhouse, potentially. And just depends on how they show up. And
which Lane Kiffin you get.
Which Lane Kiffin you get. And so it's just I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Just because it just to me just feels like it could really be a low scoring game.
Mm-hmm.
And because one of the things that I've seen from Lane Kiffin is he doesn't have a problem with getting into the trenches and playing that old ground and pound type football. So I think that one will be a lot of fun to watch. The last one that I've got that I think will be interesting to see what ends up happening is going to be Clemson versus Kentucky.
Ooh, yeah.
And in the Gator Bowl, Clemson goes back to Florida for the second time in 2 years, and this time they're playing against a team that just had some fun against Louisville, and could show up to do some damage, but Clemson started finding themselves towards the end of the season, and honestly, they both feel very similar to him. Like there's from a standpoint of just talent and what the coaching staffs are doing and stuff like that. Neither one of them feels like they have any kind of distinct edge on the other. So I think it's going to really come down to like, is Ray Davis going to have just one of those games where he just bursts out and just runs all over their defense? And if that's the case, then they're going to run away with it.
It kind of all, and that's the interesting thing about bowls now is when you have so many guys sitting out, and now especially with the transfer portal, like guys sitting out because they're transferring. Like bowl season is just a whole lot different than it used to be. It really. Unless you're competing for a national championship, it really feels like this is just like kind of like displaying your talent, and just kind of like it really kind of goes back to the old days of just, hey, this is your culmination to the year, and win or lose, you're going and you're having fun. It's a really interesting. Again, it's going to be fun to see where 12-team playoff, NIL, portal, all that kind of stuff takes us, because the teams that are playing in these bowl games very well could not be the same teams that you watched all year long. It really could be different guys at every position. So we'll see what happens.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then not to mention, Iowa, Tennessee could be a good one too.
That could be an interesting one.
That one, who knows?
Who knows what's going to happen?
Two teams, Iowa, defense and special teams, and Tennessee, maybe offense.
Yeah, offense if it decides to show up.
Right.
I mean, granted, I think this one is going to be dependent on whether or not we see Nico or we see Milton. I think we're going to see Nico. I feel like they're going to I think Milton's going to be encouraged, not told, but encouraged to let the new leader take over, just like he was allowed to take over. Let the new leader take over of the offense, and he's going to be asked to be there to cheer him on and stuff like that. And because Milton has always been, he's been a great team player. He's been a very good leader on that. He's been a good sideline leader. So, and I think Nico would enjoy having that support.
Yeah.
So I think like that's what's going to. I think like that's what's going to. If Nico is the one that ends up running it, we're not going to know what we're going to see. Like we didn't see enough reps from Nico to really know what we're going to get.
Not at all.
But what I do think is that also means that Iowa has no idea what to expect either.
Exactly.
And if that's the case, that's actually bodes well for our offense, because our offense can be incredibly explosive when they want to be.
Now, before we go, we do need to give a shout out. We're in Nashville, right?
Yeah. Oh, the Music City Bowl?
For those of you who don't know, we are in Nashville. So the Music City Bowl is going to be Auburn versus Maryland on December 30th.
You know what? That actually might be a fun game.
I think it might be a good game.
Like, that's Auburn's surprisingly good defense versus Maryland's decent offense.
And honestly, Maryland's defense isn't bad.
Yeah.
In the Big Ten, so it'll be a fun game.
It could be that could be a low scoring game.
But it could be a high scoring game.
But it could be a high scoring game. You just don't know what you're going to get, especially out of Hugh Freeze.
Oh, gosh.
So. But speaking of things that you also don't understand what you're going to get is the transfer portal. We have hit transfer portal season. Oh my goodness. Talk about some crazy stuff. Like
it's like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
It's like every day you just see somebody come out that you're going, why? Like why are you leaving? So it means some of the big names, obviously most people are going to know these by now, but you've got Walter Nolan, who is a defensive lineman who's been playing for Texas A&M. So he's kind of like the the number one ranked portal guy right now. You've got Dante Moore, who's leaving UCLA. I think he's going to be a sophomore, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron Ward leaving Washington State. Who else? Riley Leonard, who left Duke and has officially signed with Notre Dame. Julian Fleming, receiver, he was a 4-star guy from Ohio State who's leaving, which I hate to see him go, but if he's leaving, that just means I think we got more talented guys. Brock Vandegrift, the backup quarterback for Georgia. Big ones here. Kyle McCord from Ohio State has entered, and then Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma. Now, from what I've heard, Dylan Gabriel is kind of favored to go to Oregon to follow in Bo Nix's footsteps, which I think would actually be a really good fit for him.
Could be.
So, yeah, but those are some of the big names.
Yeah. It's just there's over 1,000 players that hit the portal.
Yeah.
In just a day and a half.
Tyler Van Dyke from Miami.
I mean, I don't even know where to begin with it, honestly, because it's just.
I think the interesting thing about the portal, and I mentioned this in the short the other day, is I think that what's going to be fun about this is you're going to start seeing teams who are going to build not just from recruiting, they're going to build from the portal, and you're going to start seeing teams who may not be pushing on the recruiting side so much. You might see some of these teams who are, in that like 9, 10, 11, 12 range for recruiting, but that they're going to hit the portal hard.
Yeah.
You're going to see teams from one year to the next that were, who's somebody like Notre Dame. Let's just pick Notre Dame. Good team. They've got a good fan base. They've got a good coach. They've, the good culture, all that kind of stuff. They kind of hover around that 10 to 15, 10 to 20 area. But you're going to see some big guys, some big names go there. And they're like a great example of like a team who could hit that portal hard, and all of a sudden they're from that 10 to 20, and then the next year they're competing for obviously it would be a lot easier because it's going to be 12,
True.
But that they have a legitimate shot to get to that 12. So it's going to be interesting to see how coaches use the portal along with recruiting. And then it's also going to be interesting to see how that's going to affect recruits.
True.
Because you see all these recruits, 5-star recruits who go to these schools that are, Ohio State, Alabama, because they're the big names. Well, why go there now? Because they may just get a guy from the portal so that they can win now. So why go develop there when you could go somewhere else? NIL money is going to play a different. Oh my goodness, it's just there's so much going on. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like looking at more of the names and stuff like that are in here, like everybody's like we just earlier we were talking about how the fact that like FSU has got a quarterback problem. Like their second string and their third string don't look great. Can they be developed? Sure. But but Jordan Travis is going to the NFL draft. Like he's not coming back. But there's some incredibly good quarterbacks that are currently in the transfer portal. They could literally just reload and next year be just as much, if not more, of a threat. And that's
until he
what
breaks his leg in the second to last game.
Hopefully that doesn't happen. But it's just one of those things. Like they have enough returning production where they could make that they could be dangerous again.
And then you also think like you remember Miami back in the days in like 2000s when it was like they would have like 3 running backs that were all NFL caliber running backs. Well, what's to say you don't have a team that goes, hey, we want 2 quarterbacks because we want a quarterback to play the first half and we want an equally good quarterback to play the second half.
Yeah.
And we would just want to dominate all year. So, hey, we're going to throw this NIL money at you.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have 1 year where we just bring in all these guys from the portal. Now, granted, they all have to work together. They all have to be in sync with each other. So it's not an easy thing to do.
Nope.
But it's very fathomable.
Fathomable.
I shouldn't say words I can't pronounce. Fathomable that teams bring in 30 guys that are all, proven good players just to go for a national championship 1 year. And it's just as fathomable that the players go, yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So
no, 100%. Like it does makes for a lot more fun parody, everything like that. And I just Elko did say that this transfer portal season was going to be probably the craziest that we've ever seen, and I agree. I think we're going to see a lot of crazy shakeups, especially with all the coach movements and stuff like that have happened that open up other players of eligibility to transfer out and stuff like that. So this next year, like teams that are ending this year excellent may not be as excellent next year. So or teams that were just on the precipice of being dominant may end up finding that piece, finding a few of those pieces. Who knows how that is. So
it'll be interesting to see next year. Was this just this is the first year that the portal is really kind of like this big thing?
Yep.
And that's why we have 1,000 players entering. And then next year the same, or is this kind of the we're going to find out this year the grass ain't always greener. And so, we'll see. But again, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dennis, would you want to take us out for the outro today?
Good job, Dennis.
Way to go, man.
I'm so proud of you. You always do such a good job.
Yep. Oh, you need to tell him. Okay. But thanks again for joining tonight's Tailgate. Come back next week, grab a drink, and join the conversation.